Thursday, November 19th. Welcome into another episode of the GOAT Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm your host, Jim Neander. Well, all right, week 11, here we go. Again, welcome in here, folks. If you're watching on YouTube, quick reminder, just go ahead and hit that bell, subscribe to the channel, like and share the videos. Please, always helps us out here. The proverbial us. It's just me. So we, me, I. It's all me, baby. The GOAT. Jim Neander at your service here. So, all right, let's get it going here. Week 11, why not? All right, week 11, we start off with an amazing matchup for Thursday Night Football here. Now, before we do get into these previews here, I want to let you know at the end of the episode, stay tuned because we're going to go into our Thursday segment of deep sleepers, baby. We got some real deep picks for you today. Some guys that we think could shock you with their fantasy finishes this week, but we'll get to that in a little while here. We're going to run through half of the games as we always do on Thursday, knock out the first 7 games on the docket, and we'll get to the rest tomorrow with our starts of the week. But as I mentioned, this first game, Thursday Night Football, is going to take us to Seattle, the Arizona Cardinals, traveling to Seattle to take on the tied for the division lead Seahawks. Big log jam up there. And we have the highest over-under in this game. I believe it was 57. Last I looked, we got Seattle given 3 points here, expecting a lot of points. So, for fantasy, listen, we got lots of great things going on here. You know, you're playing pretty much everybody that you would expect to be playing, right? So, not going to spend a ton of time here. You know, listen, for the quarterbacks in this game, you're obviously playing both. 2 of the top guys, going to be 2 of the top plays on the week. It's Kyler Murray and Russell Wilson, so no need to get cute there. Now, running backs do create quite more of an interesting problem here in this matchup. For Arizona, we had Kenyon Drake returning to action last week. Looked as good as he's looked all year pretty much in that game. And then we also have Chase Edmonds. So I think you absolutely start Kenyon Drake. You know, in this matchup, he's got fresh legs. Expect, RB2 numbers out of him. And then you're starting Chase Edmonds, I think, for sure, with the expectation of, flex or running back 3 numbers. Now, he's not a must-start for flex. If you have, wide receivers, that's certainly, there's plenty of them out there. And you could have a 3rd or even a 4th wide receiver on your team that you might expect to outscore Chase Edmonds. But I do think he's a good play on the week. DeAndre Hopkins, every week starter. And then, yes, this week with this expected, over-under, I am going to play Christian Kirk. He had a disappointing game last week, but he had been on a roll before that. And I'm going to go ahead and enroll with Christian Kirk this week. That's where we're going to cut it. I'm not going to take the risk with, Larry Fitzgerald, Andy Isabella. I'm not looking to Dan Arnold, who finally had a good week last week. And he could be very sneaky tight end, maybe in in daily fantasy, right? DraftKings or something like that. But in a redraft league, I'm not looking at Dan Arnold just yet. All right, so for Seattle here with the running backs now, I mentioned there, Chris Carson looks like he's probably not going to play tonight. Keep your ear to the ground if you have, Seattle running backs where you're on the fence. You really want to be engaged, up until game time tonight, see what's going on. The way it looks right now, it's just about noon. The way it looks right now is that we're going to get Carlos Hyde fully healthy, and then we're going to get Alex Collins and DJ Dallas. So I'm expecting both Chris Carson and Travis Homer to be out of this game tonight. So let's break it down then. Let's say it works out that way, and Chris Carson is out for the game. Yes, I'm going to go ahead and start Carlos Hyde. I think Carlos Hyde is a good start this week. Just going to have the ball on the other side of the field, in scoring territory quite a lot this game. And I think that the opportunity for goal line touches for Carlos Hyde is very high in this game. There you go. Now, let's say Chris Carson is playing for some reason. I'm not starting any Seattle running back in that situation. I'm going to go ahead and just fade the whole backfield. That's it. So, if Carson is out, I'm playing Hyde. If Carson is in, I'm not playing anybody. That's how it rolls out. Now, let's go to the wide receivers here because you're playing DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. Now, Tyler Lockett was also questionable. Short week. Pete Carroll says he expects him to play. He had his monster game of the season earlier in the year against Arizona. That was also the game, week 7, where DK Metcalf caught 2 of 5 targets for 23 yards. Now, his 2 bad games have been in the division against the top cornerbacks, right? Patrick Peterson, Jalen Ramsey. You assume he'll get a lot of Patrick Peterson again tonight with Tyler Lockett, a little bit banged up. It's hard to know what to expect here, but at this point, you're playing DK Metcalf, you're playing Tyler Lockett. There's not much need for analysis breakdown to tell you that, right? All right. So let's move forward into further what ifs. Let's say Tyler Lockett is inactive tonight, right? I've been hearing people always say, oh, well, if Tyler Lockett is out, it's a sneaky play to play David Moore. In what fucking world is that sneaky? All right? The highest over-under, and then you're going to take the number 3 wide receiver, move him up to number 2/number 1, whatever you want to call it, right? You lose Lockett, whatever you want to call him, 1A, 1B, doesn't matter. David Moore is the obvious next man up. So that's not sneaky. That's not fucking like some next level analysis there. So please don't take credit for obvious shit, people. Now, if you want to say Freddie Swain is a good play, the rookie who's had a couple more targets the last few weeks, now that is a little bit more ballsy. Freddie Swain did see more targets than David Moore last week. So that could give you a little bit of that narrative. You can say, hey, I see a pathway to Freddie Swain being the number 2 behind DK Metcalf if Lockett is out. So, I'm not saying I'm willing to say that. I'm only saying I keep hearing people like, oh, well, David Moore is super sneaky, so if he has a good game, then you're going to give me credit. Fuck that. That's horseshit, okay? If Tyler Lockett is out, DJ Moore should have a good game. Nothing fucking sneaky about it. All right. But I am going to play, Lockett and Metcalf, assuming Lockett plays, which I am. Let's say Lockett is not playing. I'm going to go ahead and play DJ Moore, sure. It's not because I don't think, again, that he could have a good game. It's just that I'm upset people are saying it's like sneaky, that it should get like some credit for it. So, I don't know. But great game tonight. I am psyched. Looking forward to it. Going to have the big projector out, ready to rock. All right, here. Let's jump into some of Sunday's games. Let's start in Cleveland. Now, Cleveland Browns are going to be hosting the Philadelphia Eagles. And as far as we know, we haven't heard about 40-mile-an-hour gusts of wind yet, but we do have about a 40% chance of rain. Let's see. No, sorry. It's a 40-degree day with about 50 to 60% chance of rain. This is 3 games in a row in Cleveland with, weather issues. Thankfully for Cleveland, or at least for Cleveland fantasy owners, 4 of their next 5 games are on the road. And the only game at home is going to be against Baltimore in Week 14. Probably not going to play many Browns in that matchup anyway, outside of the running backs. So, either way, let's get back to Sunday's game. Philadelphia at Cleveland. So we've got a 47 over/under with Cleveland giving 3 points. Cleveland 6-3. Philly 3-5-1, so that makes sense. Pretty close line here. I like Cleveland here. It's kind of ugly. I don't really know who to pick, but I'm going to go ahead and give it to the home team here and pick Cleveland. And let's talk about fantasy here. So Carson Wentz, brutal, right? Up and down, had some good weeks. You're expecting some bigger things now that he had some weapons back, and he definitely let you down. Now, Cleveland's defense has allowed 18 passing touchdowns in the 9 games they played this year. So, pretty nice, projection here for Carson Wentz. He has all his weapons back, as it were. Alshon Jeffrey, Jalen Reagor, in addition to now, Travis Fulgham, who'd already proven, that he was a good weapon. You have Dallas Goedert back. You have Miles Sanders back. So in theory, you'd think that Carson Wentz's arrow should be heading up. And yes, I'm willing to play Carson Wentz in this game, but I don't love it. He's not near the top of my streamers, but I'd be willing to take a shot on him. If you had a hunch for Wentz, I wouldn't talk you out of it. I know the rain concerns me a little bit, but not overly at this point. As we get closer to game time, if it's heavy rains, then it would affect my decision. But for now, it's not going to. So, in talking about the quarterbacks in this game here, Baker Mayfield, not on my radar for streaming either in this game. I do think it's going to be a run-heavy game plan, especially if it does rain, and that might open up maybe, some play action, touchdown work. But I'm not expecting him to have a big game by any means in this one. So, staying away from the quarterbacks in this matchup. To the running back position, not staying away from running backs here. playing both your Cleveland running backs and you're playing Miles Sanders for Philly, let's just make it easy there. There's really not an argument against playing, Hunt, Chubb, or Miles Sanders at this point. Boston Scotty had the big run last week, but not a lot of work. So not somebody that would be on my radar. All right, let's go outside here. Talk about the wide receivers. So for Philly, all right, they just got Jalen Reagor back. Now Alshon Jeffrey is back, even though he only had, I think, the one target last week. And then Travis Fulgham, who had 5 targets, was very disappointing last week. So when it comes down to who you play and how you rank them, I guess at this point I'd be Jalen Reagor, Travis Fulgham, Alshon Jeffrey, far behind and not playable. So, I'd have Jalen Reagor as a back-end wide receiver 2, maybe top-end wide receiver 3, with high-end wide receiver 2 upside. I don't think he has wide receiver 1 upside quite yet. And Travis Fulgham I'd have as a flex, slash low-end wide receiver 3 with high-end wide receiver 2 upside as well. But I would rather play Jalen Reagor for what I think is a higher floor with a similar ceiling. And then I'm definitely not thinking about playing Alshon Jeffrey. On the outside here for tight ends, for Philly, I definitely would play Dallas Goedert still. I know that Richard Rodgers had the better game last week. Dallas Goedert's the better tight end, and I think I would play him and expect low-end tight end 1 numbers from Dallas Goedert this week. All right, and then let's talk about Cleveland's pass catchers. On the outside here, it's a little bit difficult. Rashard Higgins had a little bit of a better game last week. I will expect him to be a little bit more involved. Jarvis Landry, hopefully getting, closer and closer to healthy. So, if I had to play someone this week, it would only be Jarvis Landry. I like Rashard Higgins, and I do like him for this offense. But, again, with another possibly bad weather game, I just would have to see it out of Higgins first in this offense where, Landry is still going to get the target share. He's still going to get the looks. So, I'm going to go ahead and play Landry with very, very timid expectations of a wide receiver 3. And then on the outside here, yes, Austin Hooper. I know he had a really rough first game back, but first game back after the appendectomy. Philadelphia is a bottom 4 defense against tight ends this year. So I would definitely be willing to have Austin Hooper in my lineup. Tight ends are gross right now, gross. And he's probably one of the few that have legit top 5 upside every week. Of course, everyone has that upside every week, but I think his is legit. Like, he really could get there on any given week, and I wouldn't really bet against. So, that's a tough one there with Austin Hooper. All right, speaking of tight ends, we're going to talk about a couple more here in this game. The Atlanta Falcons traveling to New Orleans to take on the Saints. So, Drew Brees is going to be out for at least a couple of weeks. I think it's going to be more like 4 or 5 at least, depending on the playoff picture. But we are going to see Jameis Winston. Of course, he has plenty of familiarity with the Atlanta Falcons over the last few years. Might be a little advantage for Jameis Winston. So, let's talk about quarterbacks in this game. Matt Ryan has a tendency to play pretty well against New Orleans. And I think at this point, I'm playing Matt Ryan with low-end quarterback 1 expectations. I know it's not the greatest matchup. I just think that, New Orleans won't have such an easy time eating up the clock, long drives with short plays that Brees was able to, kind of perfect. And I don't think you'll see as much of that in this game. I think the Falcons will have plenty of time with the ball, run plenty of plays. So I do like Matt Ryan here. The bigger question, of course, is Jameis Winston. Now, Jameis Winston going into right now, his ECR, his expert consensus ranking, is the quarterback 13 right now. Right? So quarterback 13, just outside, QB1. We haven't even seen him in this offense except for, a very small sample last week. I know the matchup in theory is good against Atlanta. They've been playing better defense since Dan Quinn is gone. I am going to sell Jameis Winston as the 13th or better quarterback this week. Okay? So when I look at quarterbacks that are outside of 13 that I would rather play, I would probably rather play Tua Tagovailoa than Jameis Winston this week. And it's very possible that I would play, that one's tough. I might play Kirk Cousins over him too. That could be a very low volume game for Minnesota, just the way it shakes out. And then honestly, Alex Smith is somebody I'd really be thinking hard about playing over Jameis Winston, and so is Phillip Rivers. So I'm really not high on Jameis Winston for this first week. I got to see something. They haven't been running the ball all that well. Michael Thomas hasn't looked great. There's just a lot of reasons for me to be worried about Jameis Winston in this game. So I'm going to fade it for a week. If you want to throw him on your bench because they play Atlanta again in 2 weeks and you have the room to do that, again, I can't argue against that at all. Not by any means. Let's talk about running backs in this game. Yeah, you're playing Todd Gurley in a matchup where it's not great because the odds of him getting into the end zone are higher, seemingly, than most other running backs. Just how it is. They're not long running plays. He's not tearing up any defenses at all. He'll probably have, 18 carries for 59 yards and probably a touchdown, right? Maybe 1 or 2 receptions. So, it's a low ceiling here, but you're looking at him as a running back 2, a pretty solid, pretty consistent running back 2, and that's what you're hoping for. Now, going over to New Orleans, and here's the thing. No matter who the quarterback is, you're playing Alvin Kamara. I can say, I'm worried about the receptions. I can say I'm worried about them moving the ball. All of that may or may not be true, and it doesn't matter one fucking lick. You're playing Alvin Kamara. Definitely not playing Latavius Murray at this point. I think you need our offense running, at 100% without Drew Brees. And not to say that Latavius Murray's not very good. I just think you want to get, Alvin Kamara, off the field as little as possible when you're running this version of the offense. So, playing Kamara, not playing Murray. Let's go to pass catchers for both these teams. Now, the Falcons are, of course, hoping to get Calvin Ridley back. We don't know at this point if that's going to happen. He did get in a limited practice, it looks like. Limited practice on Wednesday with the foot. We haven't heard anything yet, on Thursday. So, it's a tough one. Let's just go both scenarios, right? You're playing Julio no matter what. If they say Calvin Ridley is healthy and he's playing, I'm playing Calvin Ridley. I just think the upside is too high to possibly leave him on your bench, right? Multiple touchdown games, double-digit targets. Hard to leave a guy like that on your bench. I know it's going to be tough to play him, but I think I'd have him in if they say he's healthy. Let's hope he puts in a full practice, either today or tomorrow. I'd feel a lot better about it. Russell Gage, in this game, I know I said I like Matt Ryan, and I do, but if Calvin Ridley's in, I'm going to go ahead and hold off on Russell Gage and Olamide Zaccheaus. I know Zaccheaus had a great game before the bye, but, I can't trust that. That's an anomaly to me. Have to see it more than once. So, staying away from both Russell Gage and Zaccheaus. And then on the outside of your Hunter Hurst. Oh, my God. I fucking did it again. Hunter Hurst. It's just a thing. First of all, Hunter Henry, Hunter Hurst Helmsley, right? From the WWF, the game, right? And I just can't stop doing it. So, Hayden fucking Hurst. Hayden Hurst, let's see, the Saints give over 12 points per game to tight ends so far on the season, so it's a good matchup for him. Over the last 4 games, Hayden Hurst has caught 22 catches and had at least 54 yards in each of those games. You love that floor at the tight end position right now, and while he hasn't had huge games, he's been super consistent, getting you those 12, 13, 14 points, and that's like gold right now for tight ends. So, of course, you're playing Hayden Hurst. Now, talk about the Saints pass catchers. Again, this is a situation where, of course you could sit Michael Thomas, right? There's always that option. He hasn't played well since coming back from injury. Now you have the new quarterback. But you look at the fantasy production last year for Tampa Bay's wide receivers and for Jameis Winston, and you say to yourself, hey, I want a little bit of that. I want that opportunity to get some downfield plays. So I think you're absolutely, all right, stupid to think that you were not playing Michael Thomas. I just want to, throw it out there that I think this could be a get-right game for him with Jameis Winston at the helm. So, now, outside of that, we're not playing anybody at all for wide receivers. Traquan Smith didn't participate in Wednesday's practice with a concussion. Marquez Callaway I'm not looking at yet. Just not looking at the other pass catchers with Jameis as the quarterback. Kamara, Thomas, I think they'll wear those 2 guys out. And then Jared Cook, man. Jared Cook's a really tough one because Jameis Winston is not shy about throwing to his tight ends, especially, in scoring opportunity type of plays and situations. So with Jared Cook, if you're the Cook owner, it would all depend on what your options are. But yes, I still think he is at the top of the touchdown dependent tight end list. Very few tight ends get volume every week, so most of them are touchdown dependent. And I still think that he's going to be kind of near the top of that list for me. Do I want to play him? No. Am I willing to play him? Yes, I am willing to play him. All right, let's move on to another game here. About halfway through, we're going to go Cincinnati at Washington. So the Washington football team, 2-7, taking on the 2-6-1 Cincinnati Bengals. Someone is going to get their third win here. Well, more than likely, or Cincinnati will get their second tie. That would be kind of crazy. So, can't be a high over-under in this game. 46.5, more than likely one of the lowest on the week, if not the low. It's got to be right around there. So, not a lot of points expected here. But, that being said, I don't think you're necessarily not playing your fantasy options here, right? I mean, all right, so Joe Burrow on the road. Where do I have him? He's certainly outside of my top 12. So, he's not by any means a recommended start, but I can understand if you played him. He is, he's been good this year. He's only really been bad against very good teams, which Washington is not. They might be able to get after him up front, and that would be, for me, the biggest factor for Joe Burrow's game. If he's, running for his life, then he's not going to have a good game, in my opinion. So, I'm going to go ahead and hold off on Joe Burrow. Now, Damn, how do we want to do this? I keep getting mixed up. Let's go by team. That's how I always did it. I was going to go, switch it by position. I just like going by team, so fuck all that. Let's do it. All right. Running backs for the Bengals here. Joe Mixon probably not going to play at this point. I just don't think he's going to get in. They're not fighting for a playoff position. There's no reason to risk it with Mixon, in my opinion. Any information. Not participating in Wednesday's practice either. So, I am going to go ahead as if Mixon is not playing, and I am going to play Giovanni Bernard. I totally understand that he was bad last week. They gave Samaje Perine more work than they should have, but Washington, who's been decent against the run all year, gave up a really big game to DeAndre Swift last week. And I would say, Gio Bernard is maybe like a DeAndre Swift light. I mean, a dual threat running back that catches the ball very well out of the backfield and can make plays happen, and is a solid runner. Probably not as good as DeAndre Swift is. But if Swift was able to tear him up last week, and get those 150, total scrimmage yards, I think Gio Bernard can have a good game this week and be considered a solid running back too. Let's go to these pass catchers here. Now, I've been saying it for weeks. It's absolutely correct. Higgins, Boyd, Green, that's just the way it goes. Even in PPR, where Boyd comes closer to Higgins, it's just not it. Higgins is the man here. Higgins is a must start. Tyler Boyd is a should start as a wide receiver 3 with wide receiver 2 upside. And AJ Green is a do not start. All right, so just let it go with AJ Green. I know he's getting some targets. It's just not working. The connection's not there. He's got the connection with Higgins. It's working well with Boyd. I think Green is, he still may have 1 or 2 more good games on the year, these last 5 or 6 weeks, but I'm not going to play him. And, Drew Sample's not a thing. Go over to Washington. So Alex Smith, I mentioned it. I do like Alex Smith this week. Maybe I didn't mention it yet, but I'm going to mention it. He was my deep sleeper on the week last week. It was a good pick, all right? 390 yards passing. So even without the touchdown, it wasn't a horrible game, and you saw how close it was to being a big game for Alex Smith. I think he's going to be in line for another big game this week. I think he's going to throw the ball plenty. I think Cincinnati's going to score some points, so they are going to keep this game moving a little bit. And I like Alex Smith, right near the top of my streamers here. You know what I mean? I'd probably have him, in the quarterback 13, range. And as I said, I do like him more than Jameis Winston. So, all right, let's talk about the running backs. You're playing both of them. J.D. McKissick, you're playing because of the targets, right? He hasn't been great with them. He's not running the ball. But you can't, what are you going to say about double-digit targets for a running back? You need those points in PPR. In standard, McKissick is not really playable. But in half PPR, and especially full PPR, McKissick is absolutely an asset. Now, Antonio Gibson, I feel like people are a little more hesitant or concerned about Antonio Gibson this week. You should not be, All right, Antonio Gibson, since week 2. Now, so that's only if you take week 1 off. The first game of his NFL career, right? Still had Dwayne Haskins, had never been in preseason or camp before. Again, Antonio Gibson was one of the players with probably the least amount of experience coming into this season. He only touched the ball a few dozen times outside of high school before his NFL career, right? So, since week 1 is gone, since week 2, over 15 points a game in PPR formats, over 15 opportunities a game to touch the ball between carries and targets, and 7 touchdowns in those 8 games. So, all that to say that Antonio Gibson should be in your lineup absolutely as a very, very safe running back 2 with running back 1 upside. Absolutely running back 1 upside. It's not even close. Scary Terry, you're certainly playing. McLaurin is, matchup proof at this point. He's getting the work. You got to have him in there. Now, you got Cam Sims and Steve Sims fighting for other targets. Cam Sims looks a little bit better right now. I can't play either one of them. I know that I'm expecting Alex Smith to have a good game. And so, in theory, you should say, well, you want to play more than one pass catcher. And that's fair. But I'm not ready to play either one of these guys yet. If I was going to play one, it would be Cam Sims and only in PPR formats. But I'm not racing out to do that by any means. And then Logan Thomas, yes, he is now entrenched into very low-end tight end 1 territory. And his is through volume, which is weird. Like I said, outside of Kelsey and Darren Waller, everybody else is pretty much touchdown dependent. Even Mark Andrews kind of getting that way to a certain degree, but he's not getting the touchdowns. Either way, Logan Thomas is very playable this week. I think you want to have him in your lineup. And depending on what other tight ends you're looking at, he very well could be, excuse me. I'm dying over here. First time I'm getting like the sniffles. Played golf yesterday and I'm all stuffed up here. So, all right. But yeah, Logan Thomas I think is someone that's kind of becoming in that conversation. Depending on who your other tight end is, he might be a starter for the rest of the year for you. That's only a few weeks until the playoffs, but just saying, you could get those few starts out of him. So, I like playing him this game. Not going to be a beautiful game to watch for football fans, but I do think you'll get, some points that you need out of that game. All right. Let's get into this last 3-pack here before we do our sleepers. All right. The Detroit Lions traveling to Carolina to take on the Panthers and the very possible Teddy Bridgewater-less Panthers. So that's going to be pretty interesting here. Let's talk about, we got injuries to both quarterbacks here. Matt Stafford dealing with a thumb. Everyone's talking all week about how tough he is, and that's fine. I absolutely agree with that. And he may be tough. I don't know if it's going to be a good thing for this game for him to play. Carolina's been pretty good against the pass. Yeah, Brady torched them last week. I mean, that's fine. But overall, they've been pretty good against the pass. We don't know if we have Kenny Golladay back. Marvin Jones is on the injury report. Everybody's on the fucking injury report for Detroit right now. So, a little bit difficult. I'm going to go ahead and make the recommendation that if Matt Stafford is going to play, that I am not going to be starting Matt Stafford. He is outside my top 15, and so he's not a starter and he's not a top streamer for me. I'm going to go ahead and hold off on Matt Stafford. I am all in, though, on DeAndre Swift. Now, this is one of those, hindsight, postseason things we'll look at. But if you look at my GDP versus ADP, the GOAT draft projection versus average draft position, you saw DeAndre Swift, I think, was ADP 28. And the GOAT had him projected as the running back 18 on the season. And, man, that arrow is trending up like a rocket. DeAndre Swift, I was all over him. And all I kept saying was, Matt Patricia, what the fuck? Got to get this guy to work. Why are we still giving Adrian Peterson so much damn work? First official start of the week, quote unquote, for Swift last week, and he looked great. Mixed in the rushing work with the receiving work, got the touchdown, looked like the kind of back that could be a 3-down back for a team. So let's hope that continues this week. You're absolutely playing DeAndre Swift, which makes Adrian Peterson and then even, Kerryon Johnson are both unplayable at that point. Now, let's talk about the outside. If Golladay is back, let's say it this way. If Golladay is healthy and he puts in a full practice on like Friday and Matthew Stafford is in, then yeah, I play Golladay even though I'm not playing Stafford. Let's say Golladay is out and Marvin Jones is in and Stafford is in. yeah, I'd be willing to play Marvin Jones, in that case. Now, Matt Stafford is not going to play, then I'm not going to play any of the receivers. That's just how it goes. If Matt Stafford is playing, then yeah, I'd be willing to play T.J. Hawkinson, assuming that he plays. He's questionable also. What do we have here with Hawkinson? He's got a toe injury, limited in Wednesday's practice, but so a lot of this hinges on, health. If Stafford's healthy, yeah, I'm playing Galladay and Hawkinson. If it's not Stafford, all I'm playing is DeAndre Swift, and I'm walking away from this game. That's it. Now let's go to Carolina here. Teddy Bridgewater, also questionable. Not sure if he's going to play. I'm going to assume that he's not going to play. That's my guess right now. The way I'm hearing it, the way I'm reading it, they don't have McCaffrey. They're out of playoff contention. I just don't see a reason to be playing Teddy Bridgewater in this game unless he's, really healthy here, right? His knee, I don't like it. That knee injury looked like it could have been worse. I don't think he's going to play this week. So you're going to get P.J. Walker. Yeah, buddy. P.J. Walker, XFL, supposed MVP. I think there's no doubt he probably would have been the MVP had it got that far. So what are we going to do here? Let's assume that it's not Bridgewater. I am not playing P.J. Walker. Even in a good matchup against Detroit, he's going to air it out some. He'll probably, get some rushing yards. I'm not even thinking. He's outside my top 18. It's just, it's fun to feel like, hey, there's something exciting going on and wanting to be a part of it, but you can be a part of it. I'm not going to play it. Mike Davis, you're playing. What do you think? He hasn't been good the last month. He had that ridiculously hot start when McCaffrey went out, cooled off like a motherfucker, and, now McCaffrey was back, now McCaffrey's gone. So, you're definitely playing Mike Davis on the back of volume in this game, but that's it. And also because running backs aren't that great right now. To become a running back, too, is not that hard. You're talking about, 7, 8, 9 points, and I think that Mike Davis will certainly have 3 or 4 receptions probably at least, with, 12 to 14 carries at least. So, yeah, you're playing him. Let's talk about the pass catchers here in Carolina. DJ Moore, Robbie Anderson, Curtis Samuel. Who do you play? Well, assuming that Bridgewater's not playing, and it is P.J. Walker, the only one I'm willing to play is DJ Moore. We have seen Walker, with an affinity for throwing the ball deep. He does it pretty well. And for me, that would be DJ Moore in this version of the Panthers offense. You'd like to think that would be Robbie Anderson, but that's not the way it's gone this year for Carolina. Moore is running the deep route. So I'm absolutely fine playing DJ Moore. If for some reason Teddy Bridgewater did play, then yeah, I'd be trotting Robbie Anderson out there as well as a low ceiling wide receiver 3, wide receiver 2. Curtis Samuel, you might have chased the points, then he was uninvolved this last week. I'm not playing Curtis Samuel this week. I'm going to hold off. It was, nice. You got that nice little run. Maybe you played him 1 or 2 of those weeks. If you didn't, like most people didn't, that is what it is. But yeah, so I think that Mike Davis, DJ Moore are the only 2 guys I'm very, very comfortable playing in this game. Robbie Anderson will be outside of my starting recommendations, assuming that it's P.J. Walker as the quarterback. All right. Let's keep it moving. We got a couple left here. How are we doing on time? Oh, shit. We're not doing good on time, people. Man, I don't want to say I'm not good with it, but I'm not that good with the timing. Trying to get these done in 45 minutes, and that is not going to happen today. Probably wind up closer to an hour. So, let's go here. Pittsburgh at Jacksonville. 9-0 Steelers at the 1-8 Jacksonville Jaguars. I think we assume Pittsburgh should take this game. Over under a 46.5. Pittsburgh giving 10 on the road in Jacksonville. So, let's make it easy. For Pittsburgh, you're playing everybody. You're playing Big Ben even on the road. He's on fire right now in a great matchup. So I think you're playing Big Ben. I don't want to call him a streamer because I don't think he's a streamer as far as ownership goes. But if he's available, pick him up and play him this week. If he's on your bench, you better have a top 4 kind of a guy if you're going to play him over Big Ben this week. That would be like Kyler Murray, Russell Wilson, Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen. That might end the list. Then it might be Big Ben right after that. So, you're playing Big Ben. I think you're playing James Conner. I know it's been bad for Conner, but the work has been there. It's not like he's getting his work taken away from him. Just hasn't been great, but neither has running backs, so you're playing James Conner. All three wide receivers, you're playing. Let's just end it now. It was hard for the first, 6, 7 weeks, right? But now it's been better. The offense has been better. They've been throwing more and throwing more effectively. So all three wide receivers are usable on any given week. Yes, any given week could be the week where one of them is a wide receiver 3 or 4, and then the other 1 or 2 are wide receiver 1s. But the point is, as long as they're all playable, they all have such high ceilings and high upside that you got to have them in your lineup. So, is what it is. Let's talk about Eric Ebron. The Jacksonville Jaguars are the third worst against the tight end position. That's what makes Ebron playable this week. That and tight end being shitty, right? Tight end's been shitty all year, and Ebron is another one of the relatively touchdown-dependent tight ends. But I do think in this matchup, he becomes more playable as a fringe tight end 1. Talk about the Jacksonville Jaguars. Jake Luton? No, you're not playing Jake Luton. Tough matchup at home. There's just other quarterbacks you can play. You don't have to think about playing Jake Luton. James Robinson, I know he's been great. He's been a great NFL running back and a very good to great, fantasy running back. The consistency has been amazing. But the touchdowns have been just okay and kind of, as of the last few weeks relatively. And the passing work really hasn't been there either. So you're getting some of these games where you're getting 12, 14 points. But you're feeling like they could have been 20-plus point games, right? With just a few more targets and, maybe a little more goal line work. A couple of touchdowns called back last week. Those really hurt. I got to tell you the truth. James Robinson, I know, I'm not recommending to sit him. Just saying expectations should be, 10 to 12 PPR points with a lower ceiling. He's better in standard as he has been all year, but he's still a very good running back. It's just tough. I have a league where I'm going to play Antonio Gibson over James Robinson this week. It is full PPR. And, of course, it's a stressful decision to make. But, yes, I'm going to play Antonio Gibson over James Robinson this week in one of my very, very important leagues to me. So, just to give you an idea. All right, DJ Chark. Let's talk about, Jacksonville and DJ Chark. 5 or less targets in half of his games. In 4 of the 8 games this year, he's had 5 or less targets. Of course, he's had a couple of games with, double-digit targets, 12 and 14, I think 2 out of the last 3 weeks. Pittsburgh is the 5th best team, 5th best defense, giving up passing yards per game. They're giving up only, I think, 211 passing yards per game. I don't like this setup for Jake Luton and DJ Chark. So, depending on what your expectations are, I think that, they might spam, targets to Chark. He might be the only guy they can get going. I think it's going to be a very, very low-volume passing attack for Jacksonville in this game. And I'm not projecting anything higher than maybe low-end wide receiver 3 numbers for DJ Chark. And I think that's a good scenario for him. I'm staying away. And I'm staying away from all Jacksonville Jaguars pass catchers in this game. I'm just staying away from it. Don't like it. Don't like it. All right, last game for the day here. Tennessee Titans traveling to Baltimore to play the Baltimore Ravens. And again, what could be a really, really good football game. I don't know how it's going to look for fantasy here. Who you're going to play? I don't want to play Ryan Tannehill. We've got an over/under of 49.5. We've got Baltimore giving 6.5. That's more points than I expected and a bigger spread than I expected. I know the game's in Baltimore. But I expect this to be a closer game than that, honestly. I really do. I think Tennessee's going to give them a good fight. This is going to be a lower scoring game. I'm going with the under in this game. It's going to be an under game. Low scoring, lots of rushing attempts in this game. Let's talk about them. Tennessee here, not playing Tannehill, as I said. You're playing Derrick Henry. There's no reason to go into any detail here. Pass catchers for Tennessee. I don't think I'm willing to play very many of them, right? So A.J. Brown has to be in your lineup, right? So the question becomes, is it Corey Davis or are you willing to play Jonnu Smith? I'm going to go with Jonnu Smith this week out of that combo. It was not the correct answer last week. He did get into the end zone, but it was a very uninvolved game. The thing is with Baltimore, one of the very few places you can kind of beat them is at the tight end position, right? They give up about 5 catches and 50 yards a game basically every game to tight ends. And so if you're going to tell me Jonnu Smith has, an 8 to 10 point, kind of basement, if he does not get into the end zone, I'm going to take it and hope he gets into the end zone. So I am going to play A.J. Brown. I am going to play Jonnu Smith. I'm going to fade Corey Davis this week. And then let's talk about Baltimore quickly. You're going to play Lamar Jackson, obviously. He hasn't been playing great, but the upside is still too big to ever really sit Lamar Jackson. All three running backs, I'm going to go with the same answer I've been every single week where all three are healthy. I'm not playing any of them. That's it. One can get into the end zone. It could be a good game for any of them, but things were much better when one person was not available. Now they're all healthy. I want nothing to do with any of them. And let's go to the outside here. Well, do you play the hot hand, Willie Snead? I mean, in the last 3 games, he's had 18 targets. That's a ton in the Baltimore offense, right? Tennessee is a bottom 5 team versus the pass. Lamar Jackson not playing well. So maybe finding that slot receiver has been easier for him. I don't know, man. Snead's a very sneaky play. Of course, now I'm that asshole calling him a sneaky play after he's been playing well. But, he's a play that maybe won't be as popular. I don't think you're to see him in all kinds of lineups. But I think I would play Willie Snead this week as a boomer bust kind of a player. That's just the truth. And, when I see a guy that can score, any given week, they're going to have opportunities to score. They're going to get the ball in the red zone a few times a game, at least Baltimore, moving the ball down the field. And if he feels comfortable looking for Snead, then I feel comfortable going with him. We've seen with Mark Andrews last year, when he finds something that's working and something he likes, he keeps going with it. So I think I'd absolutely be willing to play Willie Snead this week. I'm not playing Hollywood Brown or any of the other receivers. And then, of course, you're playing Mark Andrews. It hasn't been a great year for Andrews. We know that. But it hasn't been a great year for tight ends. And he still is at the very top of the weekly potential list. Hasn't really come to fruition many times this year. But we know that the potential is there every single week for one of these monster games. All right, so now every Thursday from now on, we're going to split these up into 2 different sections here. So Thursday, we're going to go deep with deep sleepers, okay? Our deep sleepers on Thursday, and we're going to move all of our starts of the week to Friday, okay? So let's get it going with our sleepers of the week. All right, my quarterback sleeper of the week is once again Alex Smith. So, I mentioned him last week as my sleeper of the week. It was 390 yards, 55 attempts. I think he's in line for another good weekend. When I look at quarterbacks outside the top 18, for me, Alex Smith is the one name where I really feel like he can be a top 12 quarterback. Not an easy path. I'm not saying I'm going to bet on it. But if I had to pick one, that's the guy I feel like has the clearest path here. Let me clarify here. For our deep sleepers here, so for quarterbacks and tight ends, this is going to be a player that's outside the current top 18 ECR, expert consensus rankings. And I assume, or I'm saying that they could finish in the top 12 as a tight end 1 or a quarterback 1. Now, when we move to running backs and wide receivers, you have the bigger pool. We're going to be looking for players outside the top 36 that we think have a very good chance to finish inside the top 24. So as a wide receiver 2 or running back 2 or better. So these are guys you can play. I'm not expecting, top 3 finishes for these guys again. But these are guys that are not considered starters that I think absolutely can be starters and might finish up having a very solid weekend and helping your team. So Alex Smith for quarterbacks. Let's go to running backs here. This one's a little bit cheating because this takes the whole week into effect and he hasn't really had a chance to move up yet. But Carlos Hyde is still right now the ECR 44 running back versus Arizona tonight. And we have, word that Chris Carson probably won't play. We don't know that for sure. We know that Travis Homer is doubtful. And Alex Collins, looked decent last week, but his first game back, he hasn't really been signed all year. So I would assume that Carlos Hyde will get the bulk of the work. So for me, that's an easy one. If I were picking one that maybe wasn't, a little bit suspect, I'd be going with the very next guy, Tony Pollard, the number 45 running back in ECR. Playing at home against Minnesota now. Zeke had a little bit of hamstring tightness going into the bye week. He's saying it's still a little bit stiff and not 100%. The team is not very good right now. Tony Pollard is a playmaker. He'd been getting the ball more anyway in the weeks leading up to, this bye week, as it were. And so I like Tony Pollard to have probably, 8 carries this game. Maybe a couple more, but like 7 to 9 carries and maybe 4 targets. Now, thing is, with a guy like Tony Pollard, that's all it takes, man. One of those plays, one of those touches can vault him right into the top 24. And that's what I'm going to go ahead and bank on this week. Let's go over to wide receivers. Wide receivers. All right, number 42. I can't believe he's this high right now. Is Michael Pittman, Indianapolis wide receiver, playing against the Green Bay Packers. Not the greatest matchup, but as far as we know, Jair Alexander probably won't be back this week. So that opens up a little bit of everything, for those wide receivers in Indianapolis. Pittman had a great week last week. We know Phillip Rivers has no problem keying in on somebody and throwing them the ball a lot, right? So when he really likes someone, he will fucking spam those targets over there. And I'm looking for Michael Pittman to have a 10-target game this week. So, you heard it here. 10 targets for Michael Pittman. My second wide receiver would be CeeDee Lamb. Seems to be kind of forgotten. We had a couple of rough weeks there. We had Ben DiNucci. We had, who was it? Gilbert Garrett. Was it Gilbert Garrett? I don't fucking know. Garrett Gilbert. I really don't know. I don't remember. Then we have a bye week. We get Andy Dalton back. Now, is Andy Dalton a world killer? No, not by any means. Can Andy Dalton throw the ball and move the ball down the field and put up 250 yards in a game? Yeah, he absolutely can. And we saw what CeeDee Lamb, the kind of juice he had, before the bye and before the injuries to quarterbacks. I think that Dalton's going to get him involved in this game. Again, I'm not looking for high-end wide receiver 1 upside. I'm saying he could very well find himself right around wide receiver 20 at the end of the week. So, CeeDee Lamb. Let's go to tight ends to finish this bitch off. So, the tight end outside the top 18, I think could be a top 12 tight end, is Tyler Higbee. Higbee is the number 19 tight end in ECR. A little bit surprising to me that he's that low. I know him and Everett have been sharing work, but Higbee seems to be increasing his snaps and his routes run the last couple of weeks. They are playing at Tampa Bay on Monday night. And I just think this is going to be, not some huge game for Higbee, but I would think that 4 or 5 catches for 40 to 60 yards and the good possibility of a touchdown is there for Higbee. So if Higbee gets that touchdown, he will be a tight end 1. If he doesn't score, he's one of the few tight ends that can still be a tight end 1 without that touchdown. There aren't that many of them, but he could have 6, 7, 8 catches. We saw it last year. We haven't seen it this year, but we saw it last year. So there are your deep sleepers at quarterback, Alex Smith. At running back, Carlos Hyde and Tony Pollard. At wide receiver, Michael Pittman and CeeDee Lamb. And at tight end, Tyler Higbee. That's going to do it for us here today on The GOAT. Have a great Thursday, everybody. I hope you all are psyched and pumped for this Thursday night game. I am. I am ready to go tonight. Man, I got Tyler Lockett going in one league. I'm going against some players here. I'm probably going to play Carlos Hyde. I got Kenyon Drake. Man, I got fucking skin in this game. I'm ready to go. I hope you are. Have a great day. We'll see you tomorrow, Friday. We'll finish up the rest of those games. We'll get to our starters of the week. We'll get it all handled for you. Next week's schedule is a little different for Thanksgiving, just so you know. For the few viewers and listeners out there, we are going to do a Wednesday episode, and that Wednesday will only feature the Thursday games, the Thanksgiving games. Will be a very quick episode breaking down those 3 games, because then we still have 13 more games. We have every team playing in week 12. So Friday we'll go through half of them, Saturday the other half. Friday we'll have deep sleepers, Saturday will be starters. That's going to be next week though, folks. So join us tomorrow. We'll be back with another episode of The GOAT, Fantasy Football Podcast. Have a great day, everybody. Talk to you soon.